Welcome back to Memory Lane, the place where stories find their roots. Today's story is about a swing that carried childhood laughter into sky, and a father whose quiet love became the rope that tied a family together. There are places that live in our memories not because of what they are, but because of what they hold. A tree, for instance, can be just wood and leaves to a stranger, but to someone who grew up beneath its shade, who traced the grooves of its bark with small fingers, who were behind it during games of tag, or leaned against it when the world felt too heavy, a tree can be a world, a universe, a witness to the best and hardest of times. This is a story about such a tree, and about two siblings who found themselves drawn back to it, long after their childhood had passed, because of memories that kept refused to fade. The day was warm, one of those golden afternoons when the sun seems to linger, stretching shadows long and soft. Emma stood at the edge of the old backyard, her shoes sinking slightly into the earth as she gazed at the oak tree. Its branches stretched proudly toward the sky, broader now than she remembered, but still familiar. At its center, just where the bark bent outward, hung a thick rope swing, faded, frayed in places, but still intact. She let out a slow breath. "It's still here," she whispered, half to herself. Her brother, Daniel, stepped up beside her. He was taller than she remembered him being, though she supposed it had been years since they last truly stood side by side like this. His eyes followed hers, landing on the swing, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was weighted, thick with the kind of memory that doesn't need words. Daniel chuckled softly. "I can't believe it survived. After all this time." Emma smiled, the corner of her mouth trembling, as if unsure whether to laugh or cry. "Remember how we used to fight over who got a swing first?" His laugh deepened, low and rich. "Fight? You mean you cried until Dad gave in and told me to let you go first?" She shot him a look, playful but tinged with something softer. "Well, I was younger. It was only fair." Their eyes lingered on the swing, both lost in different versions of the same past. For them, that rope swing wasn't just a toy. It was a chapter of their childhood, a symbol of afternoons filled with laughter, scraped knees, daring leaps, and the unspoken comfort of knowing their father was always nearby, keeping watch. They could almost hear it. The creak of the rope as it bore their weight, the squeals of delight as they soared into the sky, the sound of their father's hammer striking nails the day he built it. Daniel's gaze softened. He spent an entire weekend on it. Remember? Didn't eat, barely spoke, just measured and remeasured, like it was some kind of masterpiece he was working on. Emma's throat tightened. It was his way of loving us. He didn't always say it, but he built it into things, into that swing. The two siblings stood in silence again, the air between them humming with memory. And as they stood there, the story began to unfold. A story of the swing, of the father who built it, of the summers that lived in its ropes, and of the way time changes everything, yet leaves certain threads unbroken. It began long ago, when Daniel was 9 and Emma was just 6. Their father, John, was a quiet man, steady as the earth beneath his boots. He worked long hours at the factory, his hands calloused, his back often bent with fatigue. Words of affection did not come easily to him, but when he loved in deeds. In late evenings, fixing Emma's broken dolls when she wasn't looking. In the way he saved the last slice of pie for Daniel. And in the way he spent that one hot summer weekend building a swing under the oak tree. The children had begged him for it. For weeks, Emma had tugged on his sleeve, pointing at the low branch of the tree and saying, "Please, Daddy, can we have a swing? Please." Daniel, older and more reserved, had only added, "It'd be fun. We could both use it." John had said nothing at first, just rubbed his chin, eyes narrowing as he glanced at the tree. But that Friday evening, when he came home from work, instead of sinking into his chair as usual, he walked straight to the shed. The children had watched from the porch, curiosity buzzing between them. They saw him pull out a coil of thick rope, weathered but strong, and a wide plank of wood. He tested the rope with his hands, pulled it taut, nodded to himself. He didn't say a word, but his silence was filled with intention. The next morning, he was up before dawn. The children woke to the sound of sawing, hammering, and the occasional grunt. They rushed outside, still in their pajamas, and there he was, sleeves rolled up, sweat already gathering at his temples, working with a focus that was almost reverent. "Daddy, are you making it?" Emma squealed, her eyes wide. John only gave a small smile, wiped his brow, and said, "You'll see." By noon, the swing was ready. A simple thing, a wooden seat, smooth at the edges, tied with thick knots to the sturdy branch. But when John tested it, easing his weight onto it with a cautious grunt, the rope held firm. He stepped back, dusting off his hands. "All right," he said, his voice even, but his eyes soft. "Who's first?" Emma shrieked and jumped forward, while Daniel rolled his eyes but didn't protest. Their father lifted Emma onto the swing, his big hands steadying her small frame. "Hold on tight," he said, giving the rope a gentle tug. Then, with one strong push, he sent her soaring into the air. Her laughter rang out, high and clear, and for a moment John's usually stern face broke into a grin. Daniel watched, arms crossed, pretending not to care. But when his turn came, he climbed onto the swing with equal excitement, gripping the rope so tight his knuckles whitened. That was the beginning. From that day on, the swing was their world. Afternoons melted into evenings as they took turns soaring higher and higher, daring each other to let go at the peak, tumbling into the grass in fits of laughter. Sometimes, Emma would close her eyes and pretend she was flying. Sometimes, Daniel would kick hard at the ground, determined to touch the lowest branch above with the tips of his shoes. And always, their father would be there, sometimes pushing them, sometimes just watching from the porch, cigarette in hand, a small smile hidden beneath his mustache. The swing became more than a game. It became a symbol. When storms passed through and the world felt scary, the children would rush to it afterward, as if testing whether it was still there, whether the world was still safe. When their father came home weary, he would pause by the tree, give the swing a push, and watch it sway gently, as though reassuring himself that joy could be made with one's own hands. Years rolled on. Summers came and went. The children grew taller, their legs stretching long enough that they could kick the ground even while sitting on the swing. Friends from the neighborhood joined them, and the oak tree became a gathering place, the heart of countless games. Secrets whispered between siblings, and even the occasional tear wiped away when life proved too heavy for young shoulders. Emma remembered one evening in particular, when she had scraped her knee badly after falling off her bike. She had cried all the way home, convinced it was the end of the world. Her mother had been busy, cooking dinner, her voice sharp with stress. But her father had come outside, crouched by her, and without saying much, simply carried her to the swing. "Sit," he said softly. He gave her a gentle push, the rope creaking as she rocked back and forth. Slowly, her sobs quieted, replaced by the rhythmic sway of the swing and the steady presence of her father beside her. He didn't tell her to stop crying. He didn't tell her to be strong. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, watching her swing until the pain ebbed and the world felt safe again. That was how he loved. Quietly, steadily, and now, standing as adults beneath the same oak tree, Emma and Daniel felt the weight of those moments. The swing was old, yes, the rope frayed, the wood cracked in places, but it still hung there, as if time itself had been unable to erase the love woven into its fibers. Daniel reached out, gripping the rope gently, running his fingers along the worn knots. He tied this himself. "Look," still holding. Emma touched the wood seat, tracing the grooves where their feet had worn it smooth over the years. "I swear I can still hear us laughing," she whispered. The swing creaked in the breeze, swaying slightly as though agreeing with her. And in that moment, the story wasn't just about a swing. It was about a father's love, about the way ordinary things become sacred when they hold our laughter, our tears, our growing years. It was about the quiet ways family stays with us, even when time tries to pull us apart. The evening air grew cooler as the siblings lingered by the tree, the sky slowly turning shades of amber and rose. It was Daniel who broke the silence first. "You know," he said, almost as if confessing a secret, "I used to come out here at night sometimes, after everyone was asleep. I'd sit on the swing and just think about school, about life, about whether I'd ever be good enough." Emma turned her head, surprised. Daniel had always seemed so sure of himself, so steady. To hear that he had doubted, too, stirred something deep in her chest. "What did Dad say if he caught you?" she asked. Daniel gave a wry smile. He didn't say much, just brought me a blanket once, draped it over my shoulders without a word, and went back inside. That was enough. I think he knew I needed the quiet more than anything. Emma swallowed, blinking against a sting of tears. He always knew more than he let on. The two of them let the memory wash over them. The swing creaked again in the breeze, like a gentle reminder of those nights, of a father's silent understanding. But memory, as it always does, carried them forward too, past the laughter of childhood, past the simple games and scraped knees, into more complicated years of adolescence. It was on the swing that Emma had whispered her first crush's name to Daniel, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. And it was on that same swing that Daniel had admitted, voice trembling, that he was terrified of leaving home for high school in the city. The oak tree had been their confessional booth, its branches arching like stained glass windows over a cathedral of secrets. One summer afternoon, not long after Daniel had turned 16, their father had come home with bad news. The factory was cutting shifts. Hours would be shorter, pay even less. John had tried to mask his worry, but his hands gave him away, wringing together, restless. That night, after the younger ones were asleep, Daniel had found him standing under the oak tree, staring at the swing as though it might hold the answer. "Dad," Daniel had asked, tentative. John hadn't turned right away. When he finally did, his eyes were tired, but there was something steady in them. "This tree's been here longer than us," he said quietly. "It weathers every storm. Maybe we can too." Daniel had carried those words with him for years, long after he left home, long after their father was gone. And standing there now, he whispered them aloud, almost reverently, "We can too." Emma looked at him, puzzled, until he explained. As he spoke, her eyes shimmered with recognition. "He really did see the tree as part of us, didn't he?" she said softly. Daniel nodded. He saw it as something that could hold us up, just like the swing. They both smiled faintly, though sadness lingered in the corners, because not all the memories were golden. Some carried the ache of time, of things left unsaid. Emma remembered the last summer before she went away to college. She had been so eager to leave, so caught up in the excitement of independence. Her father had asked her gently if she wanted one last swing before she left. She had rolled her eyes, embarrassed, saying she was too old for that now. It was only later, years later, that she understood what he had been offering. Not just a turn on the swing, but a moment, a pause, a memory to carry into future. And she had brushed it aside. Now, standing before the same swing, regret pricked her chest. She touched the rope again, as if trying to apologize across the years. Daniel seemed to read her thoughts. "He knew, Em. He always knew you loved it. He didn't need you to prove it." She nodded, but her throat felt tight. The story of the swing was not just about the moments they remembered. It was also about the spaces between, the missed opportunities, the silences that spoke louder than words. It was about the way time moves forward, relentlessly, yet leaves behind echoes that never truly fade. They both sank into grass beneath the oak, leaning back against its wide trunk. Above them, the leaves rustled softly, catching the last rays of light. "Do you ever wonder," Emma said slowly, "why he chose this tree?" Daniel thought for a moment, because it was strong, because he wanted something that would last. Emma tilted her head, considering, or maybe because he knew we'd always come back to it, like he was giving us a place to return to, no matter how far we went. Daniel smiled. Maybe both. The air grew heavy with dusk, fireflies beginning to flicker in the distance. The siblings sat quietly, each lost in their own memories. For Emma, it was the summer evenings when she would swing until her toes grazed the stars, her laughter mingling with the hum of crickets. For Daniel, it was the nights he sat in silence, the swing rocking gently beneath him as he sorted through the chaos of growing up. And for both of them, it was the steady presence of their father, the man who built the swing with calloused hands and a heart that loved without flourish. Years later, When illness came for John, the swing took on new meaning. Emma had visited often, sitting with him on the porch while the swing swayed idly in the breeze. He would watch it, eyes distant, as though reliving the days when his children's laughter filled the yard. One afternoon near the end, he had said to Emma, "That swing, it carried you two through more than you'll ever know." His voice had been weak, but steady. "Promise me you'll keep it there, even when it's old, even when you don't need it anymore." She had promised, tears slipping down her cheeks, and she had kept that promise. Now, standing under the oak with Daniel, she felt the weight of that vow. The swing was still there, old but unbroken. Its ropes a little thinner, its seat a little worn, but its presence as strong as ever. Daniel stood, brushing the grass from his jeans. He placed a hand on the swing, testing its strength. "Thing can still hold us?" he asked with a half smile. Emma laughed through her tears. Only one way to find out. She climbed onto the swing, gripping the ropes the way she had as a child. Daniel gave her a push, gentle at first, then stronger. She let out a laugh, a real laugh, unguarded, like the one that had rung out decades earlier. For a moment, time folded in on itself. She was 6 years old again, soaring into the sky, her father's steady hands behind her. Daniel laughed too, watching her. Then, without hesitation, he took his turn, the old wood creaking beneath his weight. He kicked off the ground, swinging back and forth, and for the first time in a long time, he felt free. The swing groaned but held firm, as though determined to carry them once more. The oak tree stood tall, branches arching overhead, and the past seemed to shimmer all around them, a collage of laughter, tears, secrets, and love. As the siblings took turns, the night settled in fully, stars pricking the sky. Neither wanted to leave, not yet. They wanted to stretch this moment, to let the swing carry them back and forth between then and now. And perhaps in some way, it did. The swing was never just a swing. It was a vessel, carrying not only their bodies, but their memories, their regrets, their joys, their father's love. It was proof that the simplest things can hold the most meaning, that a piece of rope and what can become sacred when touched by the hands of love and the laughter of children. When they finally stopped, breathing hard from laughter, they stood side by side, gazing up at the tree. The swing swayed gently, empty now, as if waving them goodbye. Daniel put an arm around his sister. "You know," he said quietly, "someday our kids might swing here too." Emma smiled, her heart full. Someday. And with that, they turned back toward the house, the swing still creaking softly behind them, the night wrapping them in its gentle arms. Every memory has a story, and this was theirs. A story of wood and rope, of laughter and tears, of a father who spoke love not with words but with deeds. A story of a swing that carried them, through childhood and beyond, into the place where memory never fades. The house was quiet when they stepped inside, the air filled with that faint smell of old wood and memories too heavy to name. It had been months since Emma last unlocked the door, years since Daniel had crossed the threshold. Dust gathered in corners, the furniture covered with sheets like resting ghosts. Yet the place breathed with familiarity, as though waiting patiently for them to return. They walked through slowly, each room tugging at them with echoes of childhood. The kitchen, where their mother had spent endless hours, apron tied neatly as she hummed old songs. The hallway, where their school pictures still hung in crooked frames, their smiles frozen in time. The living room, where their father's chair still sat angled toward the window, as though expecting him to return with the evening paper. Emma's hand brushed the wall as they walked. "It feels smaller," she murmured. Daniel nodded. "We grew bigger." They said little else, the silence filled instead by memory. But as they reached the back door again, their eyes were drawn once more to the oak tree silhouetted against the starlit sky. Neither could resist. They stepped back outside, drawn as if by an invisible thread, and stood again before the swing. It swayed in the night air, the creak of the rope steady and familiar, almost like a heartbeat. Emma exhaled, slow and steady. It's strange, isn't it? How something so simple can carry so much of us. Daniel placed his hand on the rope, his fingers tracing the frayed fibers. "Dad knew," he said quietly. He always knew. They sat beneath the tree again, side by side, the cool grass pressing against their palms. Above them, the stars shimmered, the same stars they'd gazed as children when summer nights stretched forever. Emma tilted her head back, remembering. Do you remember the fireflies? How we used to catch them in jars and pretend they were lanterns. Daniel chuckled. Yeah, and Dad would always make us let them go. Said they weren't meant to be trapped. Funny, Emma said softly. He was the one who never trapped us. He gave us freedom, even when he didn't have much himself. Her brother nodded, his jaw tightening slightly. He carried so much, more than we ever knew. Silence fell again, comfortable but tinged with grief. The kind of grief that isn't loud but steady, like a tide that never recedes. After a while, Daniel spoke again. When I left the city, I used to dream of this swing. I'd wake up in my apartment, the noise of traffic outside, and I'd swear I could hear it creaking in the wind. It was like it followed me, like it refused to let me forget where I came from. Emma smiled faintly. Maybe it didn't need you to forget. Maybe it wanted you to remember. The night deepened, the cool air wrapping around them like a blanket. They spoke in fragments, in half-formed thoughts and sudden bursts of memory. The time Daniel fell off the swing and broke his arm, and how their father carried him all the way to the car without a word of complaint. The summer Emma got the highest swing in the neighborhood, her hair streaming behind her like a banner of triumph. The quiet evenings when neither of them felt like talking, and yet the swing kept moving, steady and sure, a rhythm that soothed them both. Eventually, their voices faded, leaving only the sound of the night. Crickets hummed, the leaves rustled, the swing groaned softly, keeping its eternal vigil. Daniel lay back in the grass, staring up at the sky. You think he knew that we'd come back here someday, just like this? Emma lay beside him, her hand brushing the cool earth. I think he hoped. I think that's why he built it. Not just for when we were kids, but for moments like this, for when we needed to remember who we were. They lay there a long while, letting the past and present blur together. And in that quiet, they felt him, their father, not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as a presence. Steady, watching, still tied to them through rope and wood and the roots of an old oak tree. The next morning, sunlight streamed to the windows, warm and golden. Emma rose early, stepping outside before her brother stirred. She walked to the swing and placed her hands on it, the wood cool beneath her fingers. She closed her eyes and let the memories wash over her again. The sound of her own childish laughter, the deep rumble of her father's voice, the steady rhythm of Daniel's teasing and their shared joy. When she opened her eyes, she whispered, "Thank you, Dad, for this, for everything." The swing swayed gently, as if answering her. Later that day, the siblings talked about the future, about repairs the house would need, about whether the swing's rope should be replaced before the next storm. Daniel suggested reinforcing the branch. Emma offered to sand and polish the wooden seat. It wasn't just about maintenance. It was about honoring what was given to them, about ensuring that the swing would last for generations more. Someday, Daniel said again, his voice softer this time, our kids will sit here, and they'll know. Emma smiled. They'll know. For in the end, the swing was more than wood and rope. It was a vessel of memory, a bridge between past and future, a promise kept. It was a story of a father who gave his children the gift of joy, of safety, of love unspoken but ever present. And as Emma and Daniel walked away, leaving the swing to sway gently in the breeze, they knew they weren't really leaving behind. For the swing lived in them, in every laugh, every tear, every step forward. Every memory has a story, and this one, like the swing itself, will hold them forever. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the yard, the oak tree standing tall, as if guarding the memories woven into its roots. Emma and Daniel lingered outside, unable to pull themselves fully away. Each glance at the swing tugged at them, drawing out more fragments of their shared past. They sat again beneath the tree, their backs against its sturdy trunk. The air smelled faintly of earth and leaves, and the soft creak of the swing in the breeze filled the silence between them. Emma sighed, resting her chin on her knees. Do you remember the summer of the big storm? The one that knocked out the power for days? Daniel laughed, nodding. How could I forget? We were all huddled inside, and when the rain stopped, the whole neighborhood came here. Right under this tree. Mom passed out sandwiches, and Dad made sure the swing was still safe. It was like this tree became the heart of the whole block. Emma smiled, her eyes distant. I remember feeling safe. Like as long as the tree stood, we'd be okay. Daniel's voice softened, and here it still stands. The wind rustled the leaves overhead, as though agreeing. The siblings fell into a thoughtful silence, each wrapped in their own recollections. Emma thought of the days she spent curled on the swing with a book, the way her father would glance out the window every so often to check on her, his eyes crinkling with quiet pride. Daniel thought of the nights when the weight of adolescence had pressed heavy on him, and how sitting on the swing beneath the stars had steadied him in ways he couldn't explain. Their father had known. Somehow, he had known what the swing would be, not just in the moment, but in the years to come. He had built more than a toy. He had built an anchor. As dusk approached again, Daniel stood, stretching his arms toward the fading sky. He walked to the swing, placed both hands on the ropes, and let it sway slightly. "You know," he said, his voice almost a whisper, "I think he's still here, every time it moves, every time it creaks." Emma joined him, laying her hand beside his on the rope. "I feel it too." They stood there together, brother and sister, bound not just by blood, but by the memories that lived the wood and rope of that swing. And in that moment, they understood that their father's love hadn't ended with his passing. It lived on, in the swing, in the oak tree, in the bond they still shared. Later, as the stars emerged and the night wrapped around them, Emma looked at her brother and smiled through her tears. "I think we should keep our promise, not just to Dad, but to ourselves, to keep this swing alive, for the next generation, for the stories still waiting to be told." Daniel nodded firmly. "We will." And so, beneath the steady gaze of the old oak tree, they made a vow to preserve the swing, to honor the memories it held, to ensure that laughter and love would continue to soar into the sky for years to come. As they turned to head inside for the night, the swing swayed gently, empty but alive, carrying the echoes of their past and the promise of the future. Because the swing was never just a swing. It was a legacy, a love letter written in wood and rope, signed with every push of their father's hands. It was a reminder that sometimes the simplest things hold the deepest truths. And long after Emma and Daniel were gone, long after her children and grandchildren had come and gone, the oak tree would still stand, and perhaps the swing would still creak in the wind. Welcome back to Memory Lane Deciduous Tree. Today we revisited the story of the old swing, a reminder of the quiet love of family and the timeless joy of simple moments. This tale reminds us that love isn't always spoken. Sometimes it's built into the things we leave behind. A rope swing, a tree, a place where laughter never fades. Sparkles, what memory does this story bring back for you? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. If you enjoy heartwarming tales of love, family, and tradition, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Memory Lane, comment with your favorite memory, tags for SEO, nostalgic stories, storytelling channel, heartwarming tales, true life stories, generational memories, community stories, emotional storytelling, inspirational short stories. And remember, every memory has a story.